this tendency to autonomization from the social movements and groups, and the embracement of what the literature called the myth of rights. So I'm almost done. So my question is, what about the BRICS, right? So this is certainly not the case of Brazil only. We've seen, as I said, that legal reform and rule of law campaigns are taking place all over. I think we've seen evidence of that even in China. We've been there and we heard, you know, incredible stories of legal mobilization organizations that are starting to rise. And this generally happens through funding, technical assistance, and training. So, like I said, Ford Foundation, Open Society, they are really putting money on this, in this. But yet, those, you know, there are several different arrangements that can take place in this process. Like I said, in Brazil, we have, you know, multiple scenarios that we have to take into consideration. And I think that as we move towards the other BRIC countries, you know, this is going to be even more diversified. So there might be opportunities for good research here as well, not just for the law. And so I'm part of this project, like I said, it's based on Harvard Law School, and it's called Globalization, Lawyers and Emerging Economies. We are looking mostly at corporate lawyers, but there's, you know, a very small team that's looking at access to justice and legal mobilization. And I think that if ANPOCS wants to take this conversation further, I think that this is a topic that could foster cooperation and dialogue among the BRIC countries and the BRIC social sciences. Thank you.
So you've all understood the terribly daunting task to talk about something with levels of our lack of knowledge of the other countries, of the other social sciences, of their traditions, so immense that, you know, we have to go back to primary school or something and start to learn again. So I'd love to thank all our presenters for presenting very interesting and very centered presentations on what is happening in their own country, and all of them structured their presentations trying to build some kind of a dialogue with Brazil. So we in Brazil have to sort of reply to that. So with very few exceptions, we know next to nothing about the social sciences in all these massive countries. Just a statistic we had the other day in Recife, we were doing a book on sociology of youth in BRIC countries. The BRIC countries have 1/2 of the world's youth. 1/2, 450 million people between 19 and 24. 1/2 of the world's youth. So this is an extraordinary concentration. I mean, I had known that, but we hadn't discussed it. That's just one little point, really, that we have. And what we've seen today are some interesting scientific problems that have emerged. I'm quite sure many Brazilian colleagues, when they saw Elena speaking about the conservative Russian Orthodox, started thinking, well, this sounds a bit like some of the evangelical churches made. You know, so that's already. And what we saw in Elena's presentation was the Russian people are scared. I mean, the country is depopulating. It's now got its demographic curve where the population is reducing, is being humiliated, which is not good for a country that has nuclear arms. There are many social movements there that are alive and seem to be losing. Of course, I would say everything I'll say will be wrong, probably, but this is what I've learned in a few times of Russian colleagues. And you know, we see social movements as well. And of course, we see a Russian Leviathan rise. A kind of a power that wants to be central and go back to a sort of communist state. And then Naran brought us a totally other vision of China. China with minorities and the building of a nation, whether it be one nation or many nations. And we can relate to a number of things, quota systems, how they work. It was a very interesting study I heard a presentation of in Beijing done by a young Japanese scholar and he took Chinese minority groups and compared them with blacks in Brazil using statistics, and was able to show the nature of disadvantage was quite not too dissimilar in the two countries. Well, the things that unite all the countries are they've all been subject to massive changes since the 1940s. India, independence, Russia, the end of the Communist Revolution and something else. South Africa, the end of apartheid. China, obviously from the revolution, China has gone through it now, this extraordinary boom. And in Brazil, we almost say, well, things weren't so massive. But then, of course, we go back to 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, the changes in Brazil were absolutely massive. We went from a rural country to an urban country. Went from and so this is obviously one element, an extra element, of course, is social inequality. I remember a friend of our common friend, Li Pei-Ling, said to me, oh, I think we've just passed Brazil on the Gini coefficient. You know, this perplexity, because Brazil was always the country of inequality, and then China to suddenly pass it. But this gives us some common agendas. But many of the common agendas, I was very interested to see from India, from South Africa, the idea that the agendas being imported come via UN, come via the goals of the millennium, and they lead to extraordinary frustration because poor developing countries, and in Russia, of course, there's a reaction against some of these important questions. So the question that we raised in Recife, talking about youth policy, we're doing a book in the Brazilian Sociological Association, with the Chinese Sociological Association, the Russian Sociological Association, the Association of Russian Sociologists. If I got that one right. There's so many associations in Russia, you have to get the right name. And and South Africa is a little bit behind because it came in behind. But one of the discussions was youth policy. Youth policy is part of the BRIC dialogue. And essentially, it's the enormous gap between youth policy and what happens on the ground with youth policy. So I think there we have a very substantive issue. What are adequate policies in a developing country? And so that would be just how I'd like to open up the discussion. I'd really like to thank the writers so much for making this effort. And just the first time that when Li Pei-Ling said to me, Li Pei-Ling was president of the Chinese Sociological Society when I was president, ex-president of the Brazilian Sociological Society. And he said, let's have a dialogue about BRIC sociology. And I said, look, I'm only going to talk about one question, and that's the extraordinary difficulty of building some kind of minimum dialogue. And he said, Tom, can't you be more interested and more positive? And I said, no, because this is the absolutely fundamental question that we have to get over to somehow communicate between each other. And I have kind of an image about this, that what we would have to do in Brazil is to form some specialists in Russia. We have 1, 2 maybe here right now. Some specialists in India, some specialists in Africa, South Africa, and in China, and build dyadic relationships with each. Sediment some more deep knowledge about these societies, and then move forward. It's a very, very long path. But then we go back to the 1950s and we think about Bandung, and then we think about the non-aligned movement. I mean, there have been other efforts, I'm sure, in the panel on international relations and talk about it. There have been many efforts made to talk to others, and to talk in some altered way, or some other kind of way. And thanks to Gustavo's vision, we're starting this in a wider field of the social sciences. And it's going to, I would hope, go long beyond my lifetime. One of the things working with India and China, you really learn to not be impatient with history. The Chinese have a wonderful thing. Everything is ego, step by step. You work out how you do it, just step by step, and you build slowly, and the confidence between people. And this is the extraordinary thing, both in India and China, is this is the fundamental basis for destroying. Okay, you get an idea, you're confident in somebody, you both go after the money, you build it. That's how you do it. Okay? Nothing big, but there's something very important.
No, I think we should open to the floor.
Okay. All right, open to the floor.
South Africa. What about the role, I mean, besides the organizations mentioned, I mean, both countries have development councils, very important. I mean, Anual Development Council, ENDC, and the Planning Commission. And has it changed with the liberalization, I'm talking about India, with the liberalization policies of the 80s? I mean, are they powerless now, the NDC and the Planning Commission? So that would be one of the questions. About South Africa would be about NEDLAC in Johannesburg, National Economic Development Labor Council, which apparently, I mean, did an important job during the transition. And you mentioned Robert Patterson, I think, from Busa. Yeah, but the picture, I think, evolved given to us was a picture a little bit not very promising. And we just, on the other hand, we just, I mean, our countries just arranged a fund, a common fund to defend our currencies. With each of the countries puts 18 million, I think India 18 million, Brazil 18, India, Brazil and Russia 18 million, China I think 500 million, and South Africa 5 million. But it was a very important, I think, unique step of this imagine, as you said, I mean, it's, in a way it's imagine, but imagine group given the challenge of the world order today, I mean, the challenge for the emerging countries. So, it's possibilities for another picture of development from your both countries, to put it briefly.
Yes. Just